A Flash in the Dark, Chapter 17, Cuddles and Colds. Barry was exhausted by the time she got home that night. Her chest still hurt from breathing in so much of their toxic metahuman. Not nearly as much as it had, but still. It didn't help that she hadn't taken Caitlin and Dr. Wells's advice to rest at all that day. She'd also breathed in a bit more of the toxic fumes during their fight outside Iron Heights. She had spent a good portion of the evening in the hospital room with Joe, only making it home about 5 minutes ago, the clock on her bedside table blaring the numbers 9:30 at her accusingly. She towed off her shoes and flopped onto her bed until her phone pinged. She groaned and fumbled with her purse, finally locating her phone.
"Hey, feel like coming out for dinner tonight, Blueberry?"
Barry groaned at Len, who had picked up the nickname that almost everyone gave her eventually. But she couldn't help but the smile that pulled at her lips. She really didn't feel up to going out tonight, though. I can't. I caught a chest cold. It's minor, should be gone by tomorrow, but I don't feel up to going out tonight. It was only a minor stretch of the truth. She was getting sadly used to doing that. There was a moment's pause in which Barry flopped back onto her bed. Her phone pinged again.
"I could bring over some soup and ginger ale. We could watch a movie,"
came his offer. Barry grinned down at her phone. Sure, text me when you get here so I can let you in. Len smiled down at his phone and Lisa threw a throw pillow at him. You're smiling again. It's weird. Is it your girlfriend again? She teased. Len nodded.
"Yes, I suppose that's what she is,"
he said, almost as if he'd just realized that himself. Lisa's mouth fell open as she stared at her brother. He raised an eyebrow at her. What? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Lisa snapped her mouth shut. You've never admitted that before, that you would want the current girl you're banging as your girlfriend? She's got you wrapped around her little finger. That's it. I'm coming with you. I gotta meet this girl before something goes wrong, Lisa demanded, grabbing her coat as Len slipped his phone away. He frowned as his sister practically skipped to the door.
"Fine, but we have to make a stop before we get to her apartment,"
he insisted. He would never admit it, but he had a hard time denying his little sister anything. Lisa raised an eyebrow.
"She said she caught a cold. I'm picking up some soup and ginger ale. We're gonna watch a movie."
He kept his face passive as Lisa squealed in delight. Wrapped around her finger! Seriously! Do you even know what she does for a living yet? She asked as they headed for the car. Len frowned and shook his head. Honestly, he was a little worried to find out. She was highly intelligent, too smart for her own good, really, and he'd seen her around the police station a few times when he was at the diner across the street. She didn't act like a cop, though, and any cop worth their badge would have recognized him by now. She couldn't be a cop. She seemed to spend a lot of time at Star Labs. Maybe she worked there. There was a rumor running around that those few left at the lab were working with law enforcement to try and salvage their reputation. He could only hope. Lisa hopped onto her motorcycle behind Len's car and waited for him in the parking lot of the grocery store. You get the good kind of soup. Lisa grinned at her brother's confused expression. She peeked into the bag. There, sitting in the plastic bag, were 3 cans of soup, all different kinds, but the same brand, a 6-pack of ginger ale, and a bag of Lindor truffles, and a small box of microwave popcorn. Lisa laughed, muffling it behind her hand. You are too cute, Len. Far too cute with this girl, she teased lightly. Len rolled his eyes at her as he put the bag in the back seat. He shot Barry a text explaining that his sister was being obnoxious and insisting on coming with him to meet her. I'm in my pajamas. Hope she doesn't mind. Len grinned. He hadn't seen her pajamas yet, but knowing what he knew about her, he bet they would be adorable. He texted back. No one minds. She knows you're sick. Barry coughed slightly. Caitlin had told her it would take a few days for her lungs to completely replace the damaged tissue, and that the symptoms would present like a cold for the most part, though she may cough up some blood and tissue. Barry had slipped into her old pajamas by the time she got Len's text. They were light purple, pants and matching button-up sweater with dark gray puffy clouds all over it. It was 10 minutes before she got the text that they were at the door. She slipped on her fluffy bunny slippers and walked over to the buzzer next to the door and buzzed them in before flopping back down onto the bed. There was another knock at the door.
"It's open,"
Barry called out, then coughed violently. Len frowned at the deep-sounding cough that greeted them as he opened the door. Barry was sprawled out on her bed on top of the covers in some of the most adorable pajamas he'd ever seen, looking a little pale.
"How are you feeling?"
he asked. Barry glanced up and smiled tiredly.
"I've been better,"
she admitted. Len ran a hand through her hair. "This is Lisa, my sister. Lisa, this is Barry," he introduced. Barry smiled at the pretty brunette who had followed Len into the apartment. She looked to be a few years younger than Barry. Lisa grinned at her. "He told me you were pretty. He didn't tell me you were a knockout. Seriously, Len," Lisa said, looking Barry over. Barry blushed red and tried to hide her laugh that morphed into a cough in her hands. Len rubbed her back and held out the grocery bag to his sister, pointing to the small kitchenette. Lisa grinned and took the bag as Len got Barry situated under the blankets with a stack of pillows behind her. Lisa searched the two small cabinets and quickly found a small pan and popped open one of the soup cans before she placed it on the stove, turning it on low. She located a cup from the cupboards and grinned at the Disney character staring back at her as she filled it with ice, then poured one of the ginger ales into it before walking over to Len and Barry. She handed Barry the glass, and the other girl smiled and thanked her. Lisa shook her head. "How did you land such an adorable nerd, Len? I want to know your trick, seriously," she demanded. Len smiled.
"Getting run over by her seems to have worked pretty well,"
he said, grinning slightly. Barry blushed dark red. "You remember that? I was kind of hoping you didn't." To clarify, I was late for work and I accidentally ran into him on the sidewalk. There was no car involved, Barry babbled. Lisa laughed as Barry's blush grew darker and she sipped her ginger ale. "Pretty, nerdy, and awkward? Seriously, where do I find one?" "Anyway, I'll leave you two alone. I did start some soup for the two of you, Len," Lisa said, patting her brother on the shoulder. Len rolled his eyes and walked Lisa to the door. He closed it behind her, but she still heard him as he turned to Barry.
"So, what movie do you want to watch?"
he asked. "Star Wars?" Barry asked, sounding hopeful. Lisa giggled to herself. Len had seriously got himself a catch there. She just hoped he'd be able to hold on to her. She'd seen all the flowers and get well cards around the room, presumably from when she was in the coma Len had told her about. But most notably in her eyes, anyway, was an unopened package from Oliver Queen. Lisa sighed as she got back onto her motorcycle. She just wanted her brother to be happy.